Hello guys, how's it going? Screezilla here, I hope you're all well. So, today we are looking at the Breda BA.88, the Lynx. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, have I been looking forward to doing a video on this plane for a long time. This plane is one of the biggest failures in wartime history for an operational vehicle. This plane was a real enigma on paper. It looks great. Compared to a plane of similar weight, power and firepower, this should be a plane that the Allies would have feared. Compared to things like the Bf-110, this plane is very similar. However, it did not really come around that well. This plane would have turned Italy's war efforts around, possibly. It was a huge possibility for a great plane. In fact, this plane set several records for speed, world records for speed at the time. In the early years of development, the racing variant of this plane was extremely good, agile and great to fly. But well, this plane is remembered for being a laughingstock of history. Why did this great plane on paper end its days as a decoy on the airfield? To answer this, we need to look at the development. This plane was made in a time where all metal monoplanes with retractable gear were considered as futuristic. This plane was developed to fulfill requirements for the Regia Aeronautica for 1936 for a heavy fighter bomber capable of speeds of 530 km per hour, 329 miles per hour, a speed greater than any other type of heavy fighter at the time, exceeding even most single-engine fighters. It was meant to have a 20mm cannon on board and be capable of 2,000 km, 1,200 miles of range. A rather hefty call for any aircraft, but at the time Italian aviation was some of the best in the world, so confidence was definitely high. Come 1937, the all-metal BA-88 had taken shape. The two-crew monoplane had a high-mounted wing design, along with a concentric fuselage. The skeleton was made of steel. Made of steel too, making this plane not only extremely streamlined but strong. Now, it had a sort of rib cage similar to that of the Wellington. If you know how that's made, like a skeleton, like a whale skeleton, almost ribs around it. And they were made of steel beams with a metal covering the actual fuselage. However, one of the major flaws was the complexity and the fact that the internal load-bearing structure was also of a very old design. The fact it relied on internal struts and not a monocoque design resulted in a relatively heavy plane, with a rather long manufacturing time. Another issue of this was the narrow fuselage. Combined with internal struts meant the bombs had to be carried outside of the plane. Now, we'll just pause it there just to show you what I mean by that, seeing that I just died as well. So you'll see here, you can see where the bomb nestles are. And if we look, you can see they just mount on the inside there. This was because there was no room for bombs to go anywhere else on this plane. The main problem with this, though, was the fact that the bombs stuck out slightly, and this caused a negative effect to the aerodynamics of the plane. One of the biggest issues of this plane was simply aerodynamics, also the load structure of the wings. It had a very poor set of armour as well. Most heavy fighters of this time would have armour for the pilot at least. This plane had armour only for some of the fuel tanks of the plane. Now, the one we get in War Thunder actually has no armour, but the plane in reality had a couple of sets of armour plating around the main fuel tanks here on the wings, but that was it. This left the pilot and the gunner/navigator at a very high risk, unlike many other fighters of the time, especially heavy fighter bombers, and this was a big concern for many of the pilots. The plane also used the Pagio P11 14-cylinder air-cooled radial engine, with the engine nacelles containing retractable landing gear. The plane actually had retractable landing gear for all three sets, which was very uncommon at the time. Although the Pagio engine was a very capable engine, the weight of the BA-88 really did not aid it. Another major issue was the relative unreliability of the engines in the theatres of war, especially in theatres with a high dust ratio. The engine suffered greatly from dust problems. So much so, in Africa, the loss of power was so great, many of the planes couldn't even take off. The planes that were capable of taking off could only reach a speed on the horizontal of 150 miles per hour, 250 kilometers per hour. And this was a big issue. The other issue was the fact that to take off, they had to remove their rear gunner, they had to fly with limited ammunition, and only 1 to 2 bombs, or bugger all fuel. Originally, the BA-88 was tested with a single tail, but this was changed to the more iconic twin-tail setup that the plane has. What's my replay doing here? There we go. Simply so the rear gunner had a better arc of fire, so he could shoot sort of straight down the centre here. However, the lack of depression on the gun really did not aid this. The aircraft was relatively well armed, with 3 nose-mounted 12.7mm Breda machine guns, carrying 400, 450 and 400 rounds. The central gun had 50 extra rounds on board, along with the 7.7mm Breda at the back, which was operated by the gunner/navigator, carrying 250 to 500 rounds. The early design, though, had a extremely complex motorised electrical system for the rear gunner to use. This was later removed for weight purposes. The plane was originally proposed to have a 20mm cannon as well, instead of that central 12.7mm machine gun. The plane was also going to be carrying 4 different types of configurations of bombs. 3 50kg, 100kg and 250kg bombs, along with the ability for a Nadi dispenser for 119 2kg bomblets. Once more, on paper, this plane would have been extremely well armed, and would have been an extremely versatile machine with lots of different capabilities to it. However, this plane was very flawed from the start, due to its high weight, and this only got worse with the additional military equipment loaded onto the plane. High wing loads, poor aerodynamic efficiency, and a humongous loss of power at pretty much all altitudes meant that the manufacturing contract for this plane was quickly cancelled. However, due to political reasons, to avoid closing the factories of Breda and its satellite company IMAM, bought this plane a reprieve. Production started in 1939. 81 planes were made for the first series, including 8 trainer aircraft, meaning this was one of the few combat planes in the world with a dedicated trainer at the time. But this was really not enough to save this doomed plane from failure. 43 planes were constructed for the second series of this plane, however most of them were sent straight to the scrap heap after completion. This shows how poorly this plane performed. Now, in combat, 2 groups were burdened with this plane. In June of 1940, operating from Sardinia mainly against the main airfield in Corsica, 15 Breda BA.88s were used over 2 different combat missions. The crews had no losses with their attacks on Corsica. However, this was aided slightly by the fact that there were no enemy fighters in the air to deal with. Once the crews landed, they expressed their concern for this plane. Performance was lacking in every aspect. They found it was extremely underpowered and extremely sluggish in the air, with hardly any agility to be had. 64 BA-88s were available towards the end of June, but their extremely poor performance caused the planes to be grounded until September. With the start of the British offensive, 3 Breda BA-88s were scrambled. One could not even get off the ground, it couldn't get enough speed to even launch. A second managed to take off but lost all control of its tail and could not turn. The third went straight back to base. By mid-November, 5 months after the start of the war, on the 10th of June, the majority of the surviving BA-88s were completely phased out as bombers and stripped of all useful equipment. The planes were sent to operational airfields and placed on the ground as decoys to lure attacking aircraft to hit them. This meant the Italian forces had to rely on very outdated planes from then on, such as the BA-65 and the Fiat CR-32, and caused a notable weakness for the nation as they lacked any suitable heavy fighters for the remainder of the war. However, this isn't actually the end of our story, or the end of the plane. Once again it received a reprieve from the scrap heap. In late 1942, the Augusta plant took 3 BA-88s and went to convert them to a pure ground attack aircraft. The BA-88M had 2 meters of additional wingspan added to it to alleviate the wing loading problems. It had dive brakes installed and a more powerful Fiat A74RC38 engine installed, giving it an extra 400 horsepower between the 2 engines. An extra 12.7mm machine gun was also added, giving it a grand total of 4 in the nose. The new and improved BA-88 was given to the 103rd Group on the 7th of September 1943. Yeah. The day before the armistice, meaning this plane never got a reprieve. It never got to shine. The few upgraded planes were sent to Germany to be evaluated by the Luftwaffe. However, no more information is known of these planes, and that is the end of the biggest failure in aviation of the war, for an operational plane at least. The Breda really didn't have a very good life, really. It was very, well, it was pretty hopeless, and although this plane could have been so much, it never reached what it could do on paper. So how is it in the game? Well, these replays are pretty shit, aren't they? These are the best games I've had in it all day. I've been flying this plane. I've flown this plane about 20 or 30 missions today, and these are some of the best replays I've got. Now, I'm not the best fighter pilot in the world, but this plane is bloody atrocious. It's so poor. It lacks any redeeming features. Well, I guess the only redeeming feature is the bombs, as you can get a couple of good kills with them, like I did skipping into the boats there. That's about it. So, with this crash, let's head to the hangar and have a bit of a look over this plane. So the first thing to really say about this plane is it's quite pretty to look at. It is a very sleek, cool looking plane. You look at it and you think, wow, this thing's going to be great. It almost looks like a Mosquito. And, well, you kind of get that same vibe from it. You think, wow, this could be a really cool, fast attack plane. But it really isn't. The weight of it is what kills it. The fact it's so poor to fly, it's really not very manoeuvrable. Also, being at 2.3 battle rating, you come up against some very good fighters. In all honesty, this plane at 2.0 would still feel a bit outmatched by everything. Now, you do have those front-mounted 12.7mm machine guns, but the velocity of the rounds are so slow, it's very hard to get a good spot to hit people. You also find you do bugger all damage a lot of the time with them. They're very unreliable in this plane. Now, using other fighters, Italian fighters, I've had great times with these guns, but in this plane they just don't seem to work, because you can't get the plane on target very easily. The bomb load, pretty crap. You've got 50 kilogram or 100 kilogram bombs, and you can't really do much with them. You can get some good ground kills if you drop a cluster of them, but that's about it really. The tail gun is pathetic. It has bugger all arc of fire. If you've got anyone sitting on your 6 o'clock, you can't actually hit them, because the gun depression is at this level. You have to pull the plane up and raise it to climb to be able to hit anyone on your tail. If somebody comes in at a higher angle than about 35 degrees, again you can't hit them. It's pretty useless relying on that tail gun in this plane. Now, this plane is important for War Thunder though. It is a very iconic plane, and historically it's an important plane. It's a big failure for sure, but it's still a very interesting plane. I do wonder why War Thunder didn't add the upgraded version, the M, to the game, because it would make slightly more sense than the standard variant, which is bloody hopeless. It's one of those planes I really just I don't get. Like a couple of other planes in the Italian tech tree, I just think they're there for padding more than anything, unfortunately, even though there are some good planes to be had in their place. Even upgraded variants were slightly better. All in all, this plane is not something you're going to be playing in very often. It's good fun to have an old mess around in, but there are so many better planes out there. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and found some useful information on this plane. I am sorry the replays absolutely sucked. Hopefully next time I choose a plane I'll be able to get some good games in it. And until next time, I will catch you then. Thanks for watching guys, please like, subscribe, comment, anything you like, and I will see you in the near future. Bye bye.